Despite all the reports about the rapid growth of K-defense, South Korea is struggling, like much of the world, to deal with the wider impact of the Iran conflict. Let's take a look at how this imported energy-dependent country is doing to cope. At midnight Friday, South Korea will begin restricting naphtha exports for 5 months. This petroleum-derived chemical is a vital ingredient in many of the plastic products that we use every day, and around half of the nation's imported naphtha needs have to get here through the Strait of Hormuz. But of course, that's been heavily restricted by the war. To give you a bit of perspective here, the government's been urging people not to hoard trash bags, as reports had claimed that there was only enough raw material for a month's supply of such plastic bags. Well, the Climate Ministry insists that local authorities nationwide do in fact have an average 3-month supply, but the whole situation is a good example of how something so everyday and ordinary has entered nationwide discussions as a result of a war many thousands of kilometers away. The government is also supporting companies that handle naphtha through the planned expansion of low-interest loans and, if necessary, through raised import credit limits. While Korea relies on imported naphtha for as much as 45% of its supply, local companies will still be hit by export restrictions because around 11% of domestically produced naphtha has until now been shipped out. The Finance Ministry here is concerned not only about market volatility and supply disruptions, but also higher prices hurting everyday folk. So the government's decided to help by significantly lowering fuel taxes, as the fuel tax per litre will drop by 65 won for gasoline and by 87 won for diesel. And there's apparently still room for further fuel tax reductions if needed. The government's also decided to raise the nuclear power plant operating rate from 70 to over 80% to manage energy supply and demand. 16 out of 26 nuclear power plants are currently in operation, but the government plans to restart 5 additional plants currently undergoing maintenance by early June. This is all the more noteworthy because the supply of another energy source, liquefied natural gas, has been hit, with Qatar reportedly declaring force majeure on its long-term LNG supply contract with South Korea, even if Seoul had expected this development and has been working to secure gas supplies through alternative routes. So we get a sense of the complexity of global supply and demand, with many nations caught up in the disruption. And the cost for South Korea as things stand is an overall economic squeeze. The OECD's revised down its growth forecast for this country to 1.7% this year, a 0.4 percentage point drop from its pre-war forecast, with Seoul's finance ministry explaining that South Korea's high dependence on energy imports from the Middle East contributed to the downward revision. But it's not surprising that the OECD expects 2026 to test the resilience of the global economy as a whole. However, South Korea is weighing up its options to help free up those supply chains. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff here has just attended a multinational military meeting led by France, with around 35 nations said to have been represented, and with the agenda focused on the safety of maritime navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. For now, all we know is that Seoul will continue discussions. No news of a military deployment to the area as things stand.